very few really understand, I think, the precious gift that they have. And that gift is just the reality that, you're in a human physiology and what that really means. Okay? To give an understanding of that, we have to go in from a rather interesting angle. And that is, I think, the angle of evolution. What is evolution? What does it mean, and where does it culminate? Where does it lead? Darwin spoke of evolution in a very biological sense. He said that in the ancient times, before there were any living organisms, there was like this primordial soup. It was the ocean, all rich with chemicals and electrolytes and just a cosmic like soup, you could say. And within that soup, what happened was certain molecules came together that could sustain themselves in that environment and perpetuate themselves, reproduce. And so they did. And he said that just happened out of random chance. And then what happened is they perpetuated themselves as they reproduced. Every so often there was a mistake, and extremely rarely the mistake in that reproductive process, just by, according to Darwin, random chance, created an even more evolved species. And so it took over. It perpetuated itself. It survived in the environment better, and so it took over. And slowly, slowly, through that mutations, they're called, those mistakes in the reproductive process, through those mutations, slowly, slowly, we got more and more evolved organisms until we ended up with a human being. That's Darwin's theory in a nutshell. There's an interesting fact that biologists have used computer models now to analyze Darwin's theory, and it didn't quite add up. They said there's something missing. It happened way too fast for Darwin's theory to be the whole story. Now, I'm not vested in Darwin. I'm not vested certainly in creationism. I'm not vested in anything other than I want to know what's going on. I want to know the truth. And so I've pursued that. And amazingly, what falls out of that pursuit is a reconciliation of Darwin's theory with what's been called creationism, the idea that we were created in God's image. Okay? And here's how it goes. Underlying all existence, there's the quantum mechanical realm. In India, they call it the Veda. It's an underlying source of harmony and intelligence and coherence. It's the matrix that birthed the whole universe. That's basically that's physics from a Western perspective, okay? Now, that underlying matrix, the quantum mechanical realm, the Veda, just didn't happen and then go away. It's still there. It's eternally there. It underlies all existence. And it breathes, you see, intelligence, harmony, coherence into all the levels of existence. It bubbles up from the depth and permeates everything, even your physical body, you see. And what that does then is it pushes the evolutionary random chance theory of Darwin's, it pushes it, it entices it, it sways it in a direction. It's just like if you take a sandbox and just let it sit there and come back 3 days later, it's still just sand sitting in a box. But if you put a current, a vibration through it, vibrate it, what happens is an intelligence starts to permeate all the grains of sand. It starts to well up through, and you start to see an intelligence pattern on the surface. Like that, the intelligence of the unified field, the quantum mechanical level, the Veda, however you want to say it, wells up through all existence and pushes it in a direction. If you walk away from the sandbox that has that current flowing through it, you start to see a pattern, you walk away, you come back a little later, what happens? The pattern is more clear. It's starting to more and more reflect the intelligence of that underlying current. Now, where does that process culminate? Well, it culminates in a pattern on the surface that embodies the totality of the knowledge and the vibration. It becomes a direct representative, you could say, a direct parallel to the Vedic level. So like that, in the evolution of species, where does the evolution of species culminate? It culminates in an organism, you see, in a species that fully embodies the underlying divinity, if you will, the underlying intelligence, the underlying coherence of the unified field itself, of the Vedic level. Now, what does that mean? We have a species that was created in the image of the unified field, in the image of the Veda, in the image of that one thing that's the source of all things. What's another word for that? God. So you see, there's no contradiction between Darwinism and creationism. And again, I'm not saying this because I want to keep Darwinism afloat or because I want to keep creationism afloat. It just makes sense. It's the way it is. It goes together. There is no contradiction. And that's what it means to be human. You have a physiology that's capable of tapping into, with crystal clarity, the intelligence, the harmony, the divinity, if you will, the coherence, the intelligence, however you want to say it, the grandeur of the one thing that birthed all things. You were born in the image of God. And it's just a matter of purifying the physiology a little bit, freeing the physiology of stresses and strains so that you can fully live that. And so when I speak in terms of human evolution and why we meditate, why we do all the things we do, it's for that purpose. It's to awaken to your own true nature, your own oneness with God. And through that, you have the ability to radiate that quality out to the whole environment, to all of life. We can transform the planet, and that's how we do it. Unfortunately, the way people generally attempt to do it is that they have their stresses and strains, that's called conditioning, their limitations, their limited worldview. And they feel that it has some sense of connection to that divinity that dwells in their being. And so as a good deed doer, they go out and try to transform the world according to their own image. Sometimes it's said that God created us in his image, and then we turned around and tried to create him in our own image. That's what that means. So what we need to do is purify the physiology, awaken to the divinity within us with greater and greater levels of clarity, free of the distortions that are the result of conditioning, stresses, strains, impurities in the physiology, and live life on that level. And that will transform the world, and that's what this website is all about.